Hello, everybody. I'm Thomas Bidaux. I run a company called ICO. We do marketing, PR, help uh, video game companies publish video games. And I have that weird, quirky, specific specialty around crowdfunding. I started looking at crowdfunding from a data point of view. I have a background related to online games. Online games, we like to look at data and trends. And so when Kickstarter started to be a thing for crowdfunding, Kickstarter started to be something for the video game. I started to look at, the numbers. What did they mean for people who were not Tim Schafer or David Braben? And from that data analysis and talking about what projects were working, I got into the trenches and started to work on crowdfunding campaigns over time. And I backed a little over 500 projects over time. That really comes from a place of I like crowdfunding. But then I also got involved into about 115 campaigns now, most of them video games. And I like to mention we have that weekly newsletter. Maybe I'll put the link in the chat when I'm done going through the slides that we've put together that shows you every Monday which games were launched on Kickstarter and how well they're doing after roughly a week. So that's for us. That's the selection of the 100 games and campaigns I've worked on. They all add up together. Started in 2012, so it's been like 13 years working with different projects. And it has certainly accelerated over the past few years. But I'm going to do the same thing I usually do, which is I start with data. And if you have questions, put them on the chat. I'm going to have a look. If you have on the question and answer, I don't know what's the best practice. Either way would work. But don't feel like this is not like stage of the conference. It's like call with everybody. So I don't mind being asked things in the flow of the discussion. So I like to look at data, and I thought I would share some of the data from Kickstarter for the past few years, with the latest data being until the end of 2024. So the first thing is, I think we like big numbers, and we like to talk about how much money is being raised on crowdfunding. So that's what this is. And what I always find interesting is that even after the big 2012 to 2015 big boom, the amount of money that was raised on Kickstarter for video games kind of like never really like drop like a rock. It was less than 2013, and it's 48 million, but it always kind of like was in the same range of money raised. And also interesting is 2024 was a good year. 2024 was like 26 million for the across the whole year. It's the best year in terms of amount of money raised for video games since 2015. It's 9 years, and it's good. It's not enough to fund like a GTA game altogether, but it's a decent amount of money going into video game projects. Then I like to look at the number of projects funded every year. It's good and well for a couple of projects to do like a million plus, but I also find interesting to see, is this something that help what volume of projects are finding help on Kickstarter? And it's always been around 400, between 350 and 400 projects a year, and then slightly increasing over the past 5 years. And again, 2024, most projects funded ever for video games on Kickstarter. So that platform is not providing the revolution that was hoped for in 2012, but it's still there. It's still a valid source of funding and activity around your game. And it's doesn't look like it's really going anywhere at the moment in terms of going away. And that's the last slide with stats and numbers. And this is the number of projects based on the amount they've raised. So it's not the goal they sought, it's the amount of money they've raised over the life cycle of their campaign, right? And so I have those categories that are very arbitrary to mine. That's kind of like how I scoop project in terms of the size they have. It's like less than $10,000 raise, 10 to 50K, 50K to 100K, 100K to 500K, and 500K plus project, US dollars, right? So I can compare apples to apples. And last year was really good. Last year was like more than 60 plus 100 project raising 100K or more, and that's that's actually an increase. It's the best year that for project that raised more than $100,000. And I think that the volume of project in that range is actually more important than the number of projects in the the million plus range, because there's more likely a project that needs that 100K plus that's likely to be successful now than before. That has a better chance to actually affect a wider group of studios and projects, where we are in the range where it starts to make a difference for the ability to deliver the project. So then there's another number of things I want to go over. I think crowdfunding is not something that works for everybody. Not all games are created equal in front of the exercise that crowdfunding is. And it's good to go over these things and see what kind of projects are the more likely, the more friendly with crowdfunding as an exercise. If your project doesn't, fit that, then it's better to know now, early on, and not actually pursue this particular opportunity. But if you do, then you know that you are ticking the right boxes. And so I like to talk about love, right? This is all about that emotional attachment to your project that will define crowdfunding success or not. It's much better to have a handful of people who are really deeply in love with your project than a wide number of people who kind of like it. The emotional attachment, caring about the project, matter here a lot. If you kind of like it, you'll buy it at launch, or more likely you buy it when it goes on sale. Whereas if you love it, you will be, pre-ordering it. You're going to be buying the merch. You're going to be attaching yourself to the project much earlier on, and that's where crowdfunding will probably thrive as well. And I like to have I have a number of red flags for project, things that historically have been proven not to work very well when you want to do a crowdfunding campaign, and that's kind of like good to get out of the way early on. So the first thing is games for kids. It's very difficult to promote games for kids. You have a crowdfunding takes a while to deliver on what you've actually spent money on. And parents not necessarily have the patience to say, well, I'm going to get this in a year for my kid. Well, their tastes are going to change, their interests are going to move around. I'm not going to invest that money in. So games for kids tend to be difficult to market, but also a pretty bad fit with crowdfunding specifically. Then free-to-play games are difficult to go into crowdfunding. They're kind of like the polar opposite of crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is like you ask people for money before the game is available, and invest into that very early on. Whereas free-to-play, the logic would be first you play the game for free, then you fall in love with it and you like it, and then maybe you spend some money on some stuff in it. But also in crowdfunding, where it's difficult is if you have a free-to-play game, you don't have like a single value price point that you can attach to the game, like a premium game. This is a $10 game, this is a $20 game, this is a $40 game. Nowadays, it could be a $70 game, right? But at least you have like a sense of the price, whereas free-to-play is that kind of like elastic value that you attach to, ads and boots and horses and things like that. That makes understanding the value proposition put into the crowdfunding campaign much more difficult to understand. Not a good fit. And the last of my trio of red flags, the most important ones, is mobile games. Very difficult to get mobile games. First, most of them are free to play, but even a premium is really difficult to get off the ground on crowdfunding. The price point, the average price point is quite low, so you need a larger volume of people. the mobile game audience is not necessarily on crowdfunding campaigns. And then even if you succeed, distributing content on mobile is not as easy as on other platforms. Apple, Google, they will make it a bit more difficult than you want it to. So I tend to encourage strongly people to steer away from crowdfunding when they do a mobile game. So obviously, you can try to do all three and then see how it goes, but not advised. Very, very not advised. And my last thing is like what I call loveless games, like things that people maybe enjoy but don't love, and games that are part of what an audience is very involved to, but there is no impetus for that game genre to exist outside of Steam stores and things like that. I give an example. If you have someone who is a huge fan of military first-person shooters, they probably don't feel like they need another one right now and get it crowdfunded. They're probably happy to get their seasonal Call of Duty, Battlefield, or whatever flavor they are into. So it's like they don't love this game, but it's more like there's no immediate passions to make something happen, and it's probably something where you'll struggle to get people to get interested into a crowdfunding campaign. But rather than talk about only the things that don't work, we can go into things that do work. I like project where there's like a very loving community. I've used the Critical Role example here. It's not a video game. It was an animation campaign. But anybody who's not familiar with Critical Role and the fandom they have should look at that campaign, because it's ridiculous the amount of money people put into that campaign and the reward prices and all that. But the community is also like incredibly engaged, incredibly loving, and very behind supporting the creators of the show to do more. So if you are an existing community that's deeply engaged, that's big up, good tick in the box. Then any project that has a bit of like that impetus for that project to happen. So I put here Thimbleweed Park, which is a pixel art Lucasfilm style point-and-click that got funded on Kickstarter a few years ago. You have fans of point-and-click that are really into the genres and they feel that there should be more. In that case, it's one of the original creator of the genre, so there's even more people who want him to go back to that genre. So they are in a position where they want the game. They want the game they want to see the game happen in the ecosystem. I could have put an example like a boyfriend dungeon, which has that silly premise of it's Diablo and a dating simulator all in one game. Just that, very simple premise. People who are ticking with that premise are like, oh, that's silly. I love it. I want it to happen. That's good green tick in my checkbox. And then I could also put as boyfriend dungeon here, any game that has easy to communicate concept, something that they also can demonstrate efficiently and quickly is good. I use Super Hot, first person puzzle game, time moves when you moves. Very easy to do a GIF that illustrate the concept. If they had a demo as well, or a game engine version of their game. Very good to have, very easy to get people behind and follow the campaign and support it. I like to talk about Homestuck just because this is just an amazing example. This is a web comic that talks a lot about video game culture, and the webcomic creator did a Kickstarter campaign a few years ago now, probably past 10 years since they did the campaign. But they did 1 million plus, and that's outside of any video game community, just the webcomic community. And they just got spotted. It's just like follows through, like you have a webcomic that has deeply entrenched like notions related to the video game culture. You want to do a video game, that's a natural fit. Of course, we'll follow you up and support you to make it happen. And A few other things. I think there's an interesting thing where if you have not followed Kickstarter since the when it was more in the news 10 years ago, um, one of the biggest change into Kickstarter and where it fits into the life cycle of a project is they tend to happen later in the life cycle of a project. We had a number of Kickstarter campaigns that didn't deliver an experience or an art style that matched what they had early on because they were maybe very early concepts and ideas for the game. And the community around gamers that support Kickstarter campaigns are probably a bit more careful when they support the project, and they will support a project that's a bit more advanced and that you can show more gameplay. Ideally, a demo. I'll talk about that in a second. But also, that means that you are more likely to be close to an early access when you're actually ready for a crowdfunding campaign. I think early access in many ways is that biggest competitor. You can do both. You can absolutely do Kickstarter and an early access, but the timing of it needs to match. You probably want to have a crowdfunding campaign that's at least a couple of months, 3-4 months away from an early access. Otherwise, you will have your audience who will just wait for the early access. And then, kind of like, I guess, there's also like good fit for crowdfunding where you have a strong identity. You have like an art style that's very easy to identify, themes that are strong and understood. If you have that community we're talking about, but also it's a good fit if your project is spoilable. We see quite a bunch of narrative-driven games. We also see a lot of, one of the trend is cozy and wholesome and chill games where a community is also more nurturing and caring and will support a creator more easily. But when a project can be spoiled in terms of story, early access is not necessarily an option for them. And so in that case, for this project, Kickstarter become kind of like the equivalent to that, kind of like what is a moment in the life cycle of the project we can bring the community on board, get some revenue in, but also engage with that community and get them to look into the game concept and learn more about it. All of that being true. So some fundamentals about crowdfunding. I'm going to go through quickly over those unless people shout that they want me to go into detail, mostly because on the Eventbrite that Yuki shared, there's a couple of link to a blog post and a GDC talk I did a few years ago that go over these things. My latest GDC talk that this presentation is loosely inspired by is also free on the GDC Vault, which is good. So they'll go over that. So I'll try to go over that quickly so we can also have much more time for Q&A and questions. So my fundamentals are, so it's not about the likes, it's about love. Very important when you look at your audience, look at how they engage with the game and how you talk about the game. If you feel like they are just okay, then try to understand why. And if they love it, try to understand who really is into it. That's really helpful. There's a momentum principle. Most of the campaign happens at the very beginning, at the very end. So the first 48 hours and the last 48 hours are going to be your peak moment where you get the most backers and the most money. But we know after looking like at thousands of campaigns that you need to be at 20% in the first 48 hours to have a chance of getting funded. There's a kind of a weird momentum principle where if someone arrives a week in and you are like 15%, they will just not give you money. They're just like, oh, they will never make it. I don't support them. Whereas if you show the momentum at the beginning, they will be like, oh, I'll put the money in. I say it's counterintuitive also because when you pledge as a backer, you don't spend the money. You pledge money if you reach the goal. So there is no risk of losing that money if the project is not funded. But people want to be associated with success. So showing early success and momentum is very important. We also see that if you have 20% at 48 hours, that's good. Also equally good is 50% at midway, which sounds like stupid, but it's actually a data that's corroborated throughout. You could think that's too slow, but just being like 50% of the midway point seems to be good enough to get you through the finish line. Ideally, you want to do 100% in 48 minutes, but in case you don't, that's good numbers to have in mind. You need gameplay, and you need ideally a demo. So you need to show gameplay, videos, GIFs, all sort of things like that. And if you have a demo, it's really, really much better. It gives you more tools. It shows so that the game actually exists. There is such a thing as too early a demo. I had discussions with content creators, video game creators, where we decided not to put a demo because it was way too rough. But I tend to err into, I think you should make the demo available a bit too early than a bit too late, because when it's too late, your campaign is not going to get funded. That's an important thing for me. When you are at the beginning of your campaign, do not announce your stretch goal. Wait until you've reached your original goal to announce your first stretch goals, and then reveal them one by one. This is such a very important component, and so often misunderstood, because it's your first campaign, you've never run one. You look at a few other successful one, and it's like 2-3 years after they've finished, it looks like they have announced everything from the get-go, because you have that long list of boxes that are ticked. The reality is, like, it's way more efficient to announce your stretch goal one by one once you've reached your original goal. Timing, I like to launch campaigns at the beginning of the month. I like to end them at the beginning of the month. I like to have people have the opportunity to get their paycheck twice before they decide to support the campaign. And because the moment you have the most eyeballs are at this beginning and end of campaigns, this is kind of like what we try to do. It's not always possible, but it's a good thing to strive for. You want to launch you want your first 48 hours to be during a weekday, so launching through Monday through Thursday. You want your last 48 hours to be also on a weekday, so you want to end from Tuesday through Friday, ideally. Ideal campaign length, I like 30 days. If that means adding a couple of days here and there to match those other parameters, then I'd rather make it slightly longer than slightly shorter. Even though like 29 days, 28 days is kind of the same. There's a board game trend to try to do shorter campaigns that I'm not a big fan of. I think it's good to have 30 days to give the time of a campaign to kind of like spread through the community and do its effect and its benefit to your project. Shorter than that, it's not as efficient. Longer than that is also not that much better from what we've seen on data. I think Discord is a great tool. Engage with that community of hyper engaged fans. Engage before, so they know that's coming during the campaign, so they can relay news, talk about it with their friends, and after, it's a great way to reward people, give them a Discord role. I'm a Kickstarter backer. That's kind of like inexpensive and very cool for them to be acknowledged in front of their peers and other players. In terms of timing, I think it's good to understand how your Kickstarter will fit with your mostly Steam release. I have the Twitch logo here because I think it's good to stream about the game at the very beginning of the very end of the campaign, to show it exists, show that you are not afraid of running it with the people. That's a good thing to consider. When it comes to visibility, there's like two things that I always recommend to campaign. One is to spend money. Like, advertising works well. I'll probably talk a little bit about it in a moment, but it's something that we tend to forget because Steam is such a black box that in video game marketing, we tend to deprioritize ad spend. But on crowdfunding, we exactly know what happens when you spend money, and that's such a good thing. You know that if you spend $10, you're going to get $50 back. That's something I would always recommend to do. And the asking for help. There's lots of cross-promotion opportunities that you can add. Campaigns that I've run tend to be very happy to support other campaigns. And if you have like a similar project running alongside someone else, it's more likely that they actually will be fine to support you and cross-promote you, rather than feel that you are it's a zero-sum game and you are stealing their attention. So things you should do, I think it's a very, very key to communicate early about a project, to build an audience. You need an audience to do a crowdfunding campaign. Crowdfunding campaign is a multiplier event. If you don't have much to start with, it will not have the effect you want. Whereas if you've built a good audience, then you will reap the benefit from it in many ways. I would curate a few channels very well. It's more like a general marketing advice. I would not go like incredibly UI trying to do everything under the sun. I always suggest to doing newsletters because you get people's email. It has persistence. Everybody has an email. Not everybody has a TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever it is. So that's pretty good basis to have. I would say measure the engagement, and sometimes it's difficult. But there's something that is funny is like sometimes we don't ask enough questions. I had a discussion with a studio who wanted to do a sequel to an existing game, and they're wondering if they had enough clout and expectations from their community to actually do the sequel. And we had a good like 15 minutes discussion about how many often people ask for the sequel, what are the KPI they had, and within that discussion is like, have you asked the community, do they want a sequel? And there was kind of like a silence in the room, like, no, I didn't. They mentioned it, but we didn't ask. I'm like, well, let's start with that. Let's see how many people actually say hell yeah, or if it doesn't, and you have to phrase that carefully because you create expectation the moment you ask the question. And that was an interesting exercise in itself. But I think we don't ask enough questions to game communities, and very important. I think I'll go over that. Use the Kickstarter coming soon feature. So um, do not your stretch goals, but the coming soon page is the next thing I want to talk about. This is as you prepare your campaign, you can have a pre-launch campaign live on Kickstarter. That's called what we call coming soon. It can be upcoming project, can be a number of names, and the most simple state of it, just the key art, name of the project, and a button to follow it. This is the most precious tool when it comes to campaigning, looking at how efficient it can be. Because where you have, I don't know, like Twitter followers or Instagram or anything like that, you have no idea how comfortable they are with crowdfunding. But a Kickstarter follower is someone who has a Kickstarter account and someone who is likely to back your project. So if you know how much money you need to raise, you are likely to know how many people you need. You do like an average pledge amount estimate, and that gives you a number of followers you should probably target to get and to have. And you can go fancy on the page. You can add like a number of call to actions to go to your Steam page, Discord, Blue Sky, like I have on Team Crafter as an example. But basically it's like very, very precious to be able to know I am ready because I know I have enough people in the starting block paying attention to the Kickstarter campaign specifically. A coming soon page will trigger an email. It's a bit like a wish list on Steam, where the wish list on Steam, you don't control the email that's sent by Steam. Same here, the email is sent by Kickstarter. It will happen 4 times in the life cycle of the project. Launch of the campaign, 48 hours before the end, 8 hours before the end, when you go into let pledge mode. But that's yeah, it's a really wonderful, efficient tool. We know the conversion rate of followers to backer. At the beginning of a campaign, it's going to be 10 to 12%. So you have 1,000 people in the starting block. You will get 100 of them in the first 6 to 8 hours to convert. That's great because you know that you will get some momentum of a certain scale. And you will have more backers that are not followers, who never become followers. But that group of people in the starting block will show trend. They will show momentum. The platform has a number of viral communication tools. Like I know there's a number of my friends who follow me. Whenever I back something, they get a notification. Thomas backed that, and that will be true for your followers as well. So it's a good thing to do. And we know that by the end of a campaign, you will convert between 18 to 20% of your followers. So you also know that you have that pool of people you have not converted at the very beginning that sits there ready to go and support you at the end. And it's sometimes reassuring to see, okay, I probably have, I don't know, like 200 people I will convert because I'm at 10% and I know I'm gonna get another 10% of followers. That's good because it allows you to plan. It allows you to see how much more you need to get to the goal, or how much of a stretch goal you're likely to have by the end of the campaign. I'm going to take a break just now, just to drink a little bit and look at the FAQ question, because I said you should interrupt me and I've not read them. I'm working on an original IP we plan to turn into a video game, but I'm considering launching a Kickstarter campaign for a comic book set in the same universe as a way to build audience interest early. What are your thoughts on using Kickstarter to fund a transmedia project like this? and could it help the eventual game campaign later on? The other question is, I'm trying to decide between going for seed funding for an investor and crowdfunding. How do I choose? We are looking for 250 and have a functioning demo. Okay, I'll take a break from my slides just to look at these two questions. That's okay. So Nicolas, I think crowdfunding and transmedia is pretty compatible. The one thing I would advise against is to mix project. I would say you should do one and then the other. Comic books do pretty well on Kickstarter. I don't have the most up-to-date data compared to video games because it's not my field, but I know I look at it from time to time, and they seem to be growing and doing pretty well. They have their own codes and their own expectations, but it's a good space to promote a comic book. And I would say it's probably interesting to do like a comic book first and then the video game. You probably do your learn the ropes of a couple of things that way, and it's like a more natural progression. But one word of warning is that different medium have different audiences, even if it's the same IP. You will have people who will be really into the comic book, but won't care about the video game, and vice versa. So I would make sure to understand that the Venn diagram between my comic book audience and my video game audience are not overlapping that much. And that also means from a marketing point of view, they are slightly different marketing campaign and marketing efforts, and they will benefit from each other, but up to a point. So that's initial thought on that. And Jade, choosing between seed funding and crowdfunding is interesting. That's a long discussion. I'm not sure I can answer with just like the context you've given me. £250 is a big amount for crowdfunding. It's you are in the top 5% of funding campaigns any given year. It's visible, you know. Last year we worked on 3 campaigns that passed that number, but it's never a straight, easy exercise, and it requires to have started communicated, build an audience, build, but that also means that you've started your Steam page, you started to have wish lists, you have other benefits from communicating early. But it probably a significant time investment, at least, to get to the point where you are comfortable and see, yes, we can do a crowdfunding campaign that can raise £250,000. Now, those £250,000, if you reach to that point, they don't come with the same strings attached as the one from an investor. So I'm not going to make a judgment call on which one is better. It really depends on where you are in production and the consequences, like a short-term and long-term for the business. If you have a functioning demo, that's a good box tick, though. And I think that's something that's important, and probably put you into, at least you can try. I've seen a number of people do both and try to raise less from their investor because they knew they could raise the matching fund or complementary funds from a crowdfunding campaign.
On a similar note, Thomas, we're talking sort of exclusively about Kickstarter here, aren't we? There are I don't know where did you are to Kickstarter? I'm sure it's easier just to stick to one platform, but there are platforms that sort of crowdfund equity, as far as I'm aware, aren't there?
Yes.
I don't know if you had any thoughts on those or how they sort of compare.
Yeah, my experience is mostly with platforms that do what we call crowdfunding for rewards. So it's going to be Kickstarter, but also BackerKit, Indiegogo, GameFound, for that type of rewards. My understanding of equity is like some of the core fundamentals are going to be the same, because you also talk to an audience that fundamentally are not the investors, but they are love investors rather than cold hard cash. I want to get my return investors. And in that sense, it's the top level principles will stay the same. I'm talking about Kickstarter because as a category, video games are by far almost exclusively on Kickstarter. And this is where there's familiarity. This is where people already have their account. I would not suggest someone to go somewhere else but Kickstarter for a video game, with a couple of exceptions. Like I work on a project now that is French, that has a French audience. They go to a French platform because it has a slightly equivalent brand awareness in France, but also it's easier. It's a smaller entity, so they can get a bit more help from the platform owners. Even though Kickstarter does help project creators. When it comes to tabletop games, because we also work on tabletop projects, this is where the lines is a lot more blurry. Like both Kickstarter and GameFound have their pros and cons. BackerKit is also a platform that works pretty well. So I talk about Kickstarter because this is the most obvious platform for crowdfunding for rewards, which is where I have my experience. I think when it comes to equity, I think it's very interesting, and I think that's going to increase over the next couple of years in terms of interest from game studios to go that route. And they probably raise on average more than a crowdfunding campaign for rewards because the tickets are higher, and depending on the platform you go, you can get tax efficiency schemes for the backers of the project. So yes, I suspect a lot of what I'm talking about today, a good half is relevant, and a good half is like very Kickstarter specific, or crowdfunding for reward specific. But I'm having more discussions now with campaigns that want to do either both rewards and equity or exclusively equity than I had for the past 10 years. There was a period in 2012 where there was also a topic, but it's then waned. So
that's really interesting.
Good call.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I wondered, and feel free to look at some of the other questions whilst I'm wittering on. I mean, in terms of the rewards side of things, I mean, I've been in situations where I've done sort of crowdfunders, and actually the rewards themselves are getting me bogged down in and making life difficult for myself in some respect. Obviously, I've made a rod for my own back there. I don't know if you sort of cover this further on, but maybe having a consideration about how achievable those rewards are, regardless of the amount of money that you get through on.
So yeah, I think rewards is a very interesting topic. It's not one I address into these slides, but we can talk about briefly. I have a first very simple rule of thumb, which is by default, try to build your campaign as much as you can without anything physical to distribute. And I say that as someone who's worked and is working with board games that are only physical in nature. I think your backers, they want to support you. They want something cool in exchange. The rewards are interesting in themselves, but they're also an excuse to give you more. So you just need to find a good excuse. You don't need to find like the one thing that everybody wants. They are here to help you and support your project and be make you succeed and make you achieve your vision for the game. Then there are some campaigns that are a good fit for physical rewards, but I would really look at that last. First, what can I do that's digital? Digital art book in PDF, original soundtrack, roles on the Discord, put your face in the game. There's the one campaign I talk in France is you drive around in an ambulance. All the backers, regardless of their level, can name streets because there's lots of streets. It's a whole city. So there's a entry level reward. Just get the game, give the name to a street, and obviously they put a disclaimer. You can't put any name for obvious reasons, but this is also an inexpensive type thing for them. They just put maximum number of characters, and then they send a form where it's like, what's the street name you want? So I think you can be creative. I think there's lots of interesting ideas to have. Not all the games are equal. I worked on a couple of MMOs in the past 3 months, and the MMOs have like a gazillion things they can offer you. So a specific, horse or spaceship or whatever, and different color than anybody else, anything like that. And then you have a game that's like super narration based. The character has its own art style. Putting like a Kickstarter party on that character would kill the mood, right? So, but you know, it's a creative exercise. I think there's a lot of room for games to find interesting creative ideas. Like the point and click narrative game, very difficult, but the Thimbleweed Park did something very cute where above a certain amount of money, you could put your name in the fun book of the game. So there's part of the gameplay. There's a fun book. You can call people and they distracted, or you can solve a number of puzzle things to the fun book. But all the backers could put their name. And if you call a backer, they were like, well, it would be fun if they could have like a voicemail. So they did something which required a bit of clever management, because there was hundreds of people that was at that level backer, where they could record like a 3 seconds message that you could hear if you call that person in the game. You just get straight to voicemail and says, hey, it's Thomas, I'm not here. Leave a message after the beep, you know. And some people made very funny messages, and you know, it's just a kind of like a Easter egg for you and your friends, and maybe a couple of other strangers on the internet find out about it, but it made people feel good. So there's a way to be creative with the rewards, and that's my number one thing with video games. Try to do everything digital and original. And the second thing on rewards for online for video games that I give as a general advice to people is just be careful of the price and price things right. So like, oh, we'll put your name, you put your likeness into the game, and it's going to be $100. I'm like, $100? That means I'm going to send you a picture of me, and then you're going to make it in the game. I'm going to say it's the wrong color, whatever. It's going to be an exchange depending on the complexity of the game. That's not worth $100 in terms of work. It's going to be much more annoying than that. And if you have 60 people who do it, are you ready to go through that process like 60 times? And so it's not unusual for me when they do this kind of things to like crank the price up, because you want them to feel like when they do it, they feel it's worth it because they got the right amount of money against it. Do that. So Jade was asking, can I offer equity per game instead of in the company? There's probably platforms that allow that. Fig used to do this revenue share. I know there's some project along those lines that are trying to come back. I don't know of a platform that allowed to do it today, but it's probably going to do return the next couple of years. And that's for platforms that allow it. Kickstarter doesn't allow any financial component for your project. And then Aaron was saying, what would be a good starting figure of users in the community to decide it's time to launch a Kickstarter? It depends on I mean, if you have a game that costs £1 million to make, or a game that costs like, you know, £50,000 because you funded everything else, then you need a different number of users. I would look at what's the amount of money I'm trying to get, and then try to look at what is the price of my game. Probably multiply that price by 50%. So my game is like $20. I'm going to say it's $30 on average as a pledge. And if I want to raise $30,000, then I need 1,000 people. That's probably what I would look at. I would say if I have 1,000 followers, I should be able to do 1,000 backers, even though you only convert 20% of them. There's lots of backers that come without being followers. And so it's a good ballpark, if that makes sense. I'm going to go on those 3 campaigns I want to talk about, but keep sending stuff. It's all good for me. So I have 3 campaigns that from last year. I just want to go back on and show, because each one of them has interesting story behind them. The first one is Trash Goblin. So, you know, made in the UK by Spilt Milk Studio. I keep calling them Split Milk. It's Spilt Milk Studio. So they did, you know, close to £100,000. They had 2,000 backers. They had 600 followers at launch, so they did much more than that same number. But they also launched an interesting time. So the thing I look at for the project is they launched on the 6th of December and they ended on the 10th of January. And in general, I don't recommend. People ask me if there's seasonality in Kickstarter. I usually say no, except Christmas. avoid Christmas. Christmas is bad. But with Trash Goblin, we didn't have a choice because they had a Game Awards wholesome game feature, and they wanted to leverage that. And I think this is where that multiple followers to back is actually pretty high, is because yes, they had only quote unquote 600 followers at launch, which is not a bad number to be honest. But also at launch, they were in the Game Awards wholesome direct, I think was, and so that helped them. But one thing we did as well is that we ran a campaign that was like 42 days instead of my usual 30, because I wanted them to stay away as much as possible from 1st of January and Christmas when they ended the campaign. So when the campaign ended, they had like a week plus away from that kind of like dead zone of Christmas and New Year's. Another thing also that was interesting is like during that month, they more than doubled the number of wish lists. It was a good event in that regard for the part they have on the ecosystem. So it's good for the crowdfunding and on Kickstarter itself. But you have a number of people who will see the project because they are on Kickstarter that will not back it, but they will pay attention enough so that they actually wish list the game on Steam. So data coming soon. I think like 3 months before. We talked about the dates already. They did a lot of cross promotion. They had lots of support from other chill, wholesome, cute games. That represent like 5% of the total of money that they raised, so close to £5,000. And that's what we track. So we know that 5% came through the cross promotion, but the way the tracking works on Kickstarter is pretty good, but there's also like more attention. There's probably people who were aware of the product from another source originally, but the cross promotion maybe put them through the line, or they were aware of it, cross promotion, and then an ad came up, and then that's how they cross and became a backer. So that was good support for them. And they had very granular stretch goal. I think it was perfect. The game, you know, that little goblin that clean and repair little items, and they have a bunch of items that you can repair and fix and clean. But their stretch goals were basically I think it was every £1,000 they were like, here's a new trinket. And so they had the musical trinkets. It was like £2,000 and £3,000 dollars. So like that was 1K pound or something like that. But that basically it's like, hey, you've unlocked the loot, and then you've unlocked this. And I think that small amount, quote unquote, meant that there were constantly things to tell to people, we've unlocked a new thing. We've unlocked a new thing. We've unlocked that new thing. And that was very a good rhythm for the campaign to always have something happening. I think that was brilliant. And they played to the strengths of the game, where talking to Andrew, who ran Spillmaker, was like, this is very inexpensive for us to do. This is very easy for us to do. I'm very comfortable committing to do more of those things for stretch goals, because that makes the game more varied, but also we don't break the bank. The second campaign I have here is Broken Sword Reforged, which is kind of a unusual campaign. They had run a campaign in 2012, and they came back from that campaign like more than 12 years ago, slightly broken and slightly. They liked it. They wanted to do another crowdfunding campaign. They were also like, we really want to make sure that's easier this time. And so that close to 5,000, close to 400 followers, 5,000 backers went to finish the campaign. They ran for months. They raised a significant amount, bigger than their initial goal, close to £620,000. But they also wanted to make sure, and so they tick the box off. They have a very dedicated, very loving community, and they know how to access it. They have their emails, they're on the Discord, so they have access to that community, which is a very important point. But we made very simple rewards. There were like 3 rewards. There was the collector's edition digital version, there's the collector's edition physical version, and there was the ultimate physical collector's edition, and nothing else. And so we also, the game was announced already. It was coming up quite shortly after the campaign, if I remember correctly. And so the idea of how should we tell them that it's like, we don't need the money, we're going to make the game anyway, so what do we tell them about that campaign that we should do? And they knew they were eager to do a collector's edition, but they also wanted to be careful about it. And so it became a campaign where if the campaign fails, there's no collector's edition. But if it does fail, then we make it happen. And I think that that was a very clear message. Like we're making a collector's edition campaign, and not we are making that game campaign. That amazing newsletter registration and result. Their return on ad spend, ROAS, was 5.4. That means for every dollar they spend, they got $5.40 back. That was very useful for them. We had 0 stretch goal, which I think I'm very happy with. People tend to overestimate. So stretch goals are good, but they need to be in line with what you want to achieve in the campaign and what you can do with the game. And there were lots of reasons for not doing one. And when we prepared the campaign, I was very supportive of the idea: don't have stretch goals. You don't need them. You have a community that's so loving, and you have rewards that are so interesting that they will just support you. And we were proving right. And they leveraged the add-on feature where you can buy a few extra bits pretty well. They were able to monetize some of their 2012 campaign rewards that they still had in inventory of that way. So it was kind of like a bit more money and getting rid of stuff that was just collecting dust in a warehouse for them. Everybody was winning. And my last campaign I want to talk about is a French campaign. Did I mention I'm French? Oh, you can probably hear I'm French. So it's called the Witch Bakery, which is a very cute, wholesome. You are a baking witch in Paris, a little bit like a Ghibli Miyazaki vibe to it with Amélie, maybe. They had 6,000 backers at the end of the campaign, 4,000 followers at launch. So again, a bit more than that one-to-one ratio that I like to use for my estimate. And they did 270,000 euros by the end of the campaign, but they ran lead pledges and they got an extra 45,000 euros in lead pledges. That basically, after the end of the campaign, you let it run, and you can still get people to get money. They also tripled the number of wishlist. They went from 10,000 when they launched the campaign to 30,000. Against that kind of like noise that created around the campaign is pretty good. And they were really good with they're coming soon. They had a community. They're pretty good on social media, and they really rallied them around that coming soon. For this is the studio's first game. They had 4,000 followers when they launched the campaign. That's a very, very good number, and they put them in a very good position. They were super creative with some of the rewards and the add-ons. My favorite add-on that they put was, so if you're not familiar with French baking culture, there is a rift in France between people who called the pastry pain au chocolat versus people who call it chocolatine. But it's like it's like war. It's a civil war, and there's a street line from the southwest of France where you the word changed based on that. And they made an add-on which was like, how should we call this in the game? Keeping in mind that it will be an option to swap from one another, which one is going to be the default name for that pastry. And you had a number of people, it was like a €1 add-on, but there's some people who get like 20 euros to give like 20 votes for their favorite name for the two. And some people also like who didn't care, who just like thought it was funny and just gave a few extra euros to the campaign just because that was creative. And the last thing that I think that went really well with that campaign was the stretch goals. So they have a very narrative-driven game based around chapters, and they had enough money with the initial goal to do 2 chapters. And they were very scared about, but the game is going to feel empty because we know there's another 3 chapters we want to do. And so I had lots of discussion with them, and I managed to talk them through the way they presented the campaign and said, like, do you think that if you do the game with 2 chapters, even though you have in yourself like an extra 3, do you think it's going to be a satisfying experience, a good game? And they're like, yeah, we think it's going to be, it's not what we want, but we think it's going to be okay. So we said, like, just don't tell people about the other 3 chapters. Just do this. Keep the line on what is the original goal. And then when you meet it, you say, amazing, here's the stretch goal. We have another chapter. That's the theme. If we can do that, that's going to be amazing. It's going to complement what we do. And they were initially wanted to tell everybody, like, we have 5 chapters, the game is incomplete without them. Whereas in reality, if they had not raised the money, they would have done a game they feel that they would have made work from a story point of view with the smaller number of chapters. And amazing story. They got the 300K they needed for the 5 chapters, and they're going to do it. And nobody in the community was like, I was lied to. You had, all those chapters that would make the game complete. Everybody was just happy to support them, and I think they would have happy with 2, 3, 4, or the 5 chapters. So that was a good story and with a good ending for that project. That's the chapters in question. Like I think it was 3 initially and 4 and 5 we added to that later. I think that's it for what I did in the slides. We had a couple of questions. I'm happy to take all the questions. I'm here with you guys if you have any concerns or anything like that. I'm going to look at the chat because I look at the questions but not see the chat. So
I don't think there's been too many other questions that we haven't covered already, Thomas. But I wondered, going back to sort of what we spoke about earlier about sort of focusing on Kickstarter, what's your sort of take on sort of discoverability? Obviously, games have lots of challenges around discoverability at sale. Is there less competition on the Kickstarter, or is it almost more competition on the Kickstarter?
So
How do you find that?
I absolutely love the question. I think so. Where Kickstarter comes, a crowdfunding campaign comes when it comes to security. It's not going to make it easy because you need to have an audience before you launch. But it's an extra marketing beat. It's one more opportunity to actually get people to notice your game and to get interested in it. And that, I think, in itself, if you have a game that fits the priorities of a crowdfunding campaign, is quite interesting and worth investigating. Then Kickstarter itself will not bring people to your page. They can help a bit with their visibility on the algorithm, but the reality is that there's a low number of people who actually go on Kickstarter this morning and say, oh, which project I'm going to check out and back, Most of the people who come to a campaign page, they come through your own community, media coverage, socials, or things like that. But it helps a little bit. There is, such a thing as like you arrive on the front page and you've been popular and you're popped up. Contacting the Kickstarter team is a good idea. I'm putting their email here with their blessing. There's a games team at Kickstarter. Is like 5 people, 6 people now, whose full-time job is to make you successful on Kickstarter as a games creator. And they have a number of tools that could help. They can make you project we love. It helps a little bit, the algorithm. It proves to people that someone at Kickstarter in the games team actually checked the project, think it's a good project, and actually give it the tag. Sometimes they put you in the newsletters. That goes to a significant number of people, so it's more eyeballs for you. So yeah, I think it's an interesting chicken and egg. It's not something. So Kickstarter as a name for a concept is slightly misleading because yes, in 2009 when it was a new thing, and 2012 when it became a thing for video games, it was a way to kickstart a project, like initiate it. David Braben, Alien Dangerous Kickstarter page is horrible to today's standards. There's very few descriptions of the game. There's not just like a note of intention from him on the game, and it worked. It was okay back then. Now it would not work at all. So it's not a Kickstarter. It's like a kick medium stage of the company of the project continuation, right? Or it could be a kick finisher if you are for some project I worked on where we're like, well, we are 3 to 6 months before we actually going to finish the production. We could use a bit more oomph into what we do. Let's consider that. But it's a good tool in the toolbox for marketing a game in terms of getting more people to care about it. The thing you do with your backers is that people who invest in your campaign will be your strongest defenders and the best people who will talk about it because they want you to succeed. They want to be associated with your success. So you create a good number of heralds for your project, ambassadors is probably a better word, that will be like, oh yeah, I know that project, I've backed it, you know, I've read all about it, I think it's really cool. I was like, oh, okay, my friend's really into that, I should check it out. So it's a good tool. It's not the silver bullet we're all looking for at the moment.
That makes a lot of sense. That's really, really helpful. We're sort of getting close to, well, we've gone over a little bit. So yeah, do you want to sort of impart your concluding words on the screen there?
Well, do I have concluding words after this? Yeah, I do. Oh wow, I came prepared. Put your campaign coming soon page up as soon as you can. It's called coming soon, but there's no restriction on how soon it can be. And it's better to be too soon than too late. I've worked with way too many campaigns that did that pre-campaign phase way too close to the wire. I really recommend that. It's also a good way to see what's working and what's not working. It's like that number is not moving. We're talking a lot about the game, and it's not helping that visibility. What else can we do that actually move that needle? That's really good. Tailor the campaign to your audience. Maybe make the campaign unique to your game. Leverage what's easy and cheap to do into your game, but make the experience fun for the backer and the player. The kind of like other side of that coin is like, don't let other campaigns dictate what you do. Don't go into a campaign from like 10 years ago, massively successful, that did millions, and think that you should do the same thing. Be wary of replicating the way a campaign is structured and built from a game that has nothing to do like your game. Just make your own with your own project. And there's quite a lot new promising features coming up for Kickstarter. There's a new pledge manager that got live last week. There's something called multiple payment. I can't remember that, but basically, if you have expensive pledges, you have something that's like $100 or $200, you can have an option where you tell the backers you can pay in 3 installments. That's also really good. It's great for board games. I think video games can leverage that as well. And the platform itself has been more, I talk specifically about Kickstarter here, but the reason they are doing a lot more features is because they have competitors that are basically challenging them, and I think that's also very good. So that's interesting. We'll see probably more things for video games in the next 12 months, I would expect. That's my concluding words. Like, look at the opportunities.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Thomas. This has been really, really fascinating, and thank you to everyone that's jumped in with questions. I think we've all got an awful lot out of this. It's been really, really good. And your details are on the screen there, and I'll pop those links in the bottom of the video when it's recorded on YouTube. So yeah, thank you so much.